So I think it's unwise to sort of, take the foot off the accelerator, and we maybe can slow down a little bit, but I don't think one should stop, because I think that wouldn't be in Hong Kong's long-term interest.
No, I think we have to move fairly rapidly from breakfast to lunch. If we pause to digest for too long, then other markets will move ahead and have their lunch and their dinner, and we'll still be pondering what to order for appetizers. So it's important to move ahead. I don't think companies in any way have been flummoxed by recent changes. They've all managed to comply with the rules, and many of the proposals that were made, in fact, were rolled back. So the changes that they have on their hands now were less than were originally proposed. For example, the reporting deadline for annual reports is still 4 months. And so at a typical point in the year, a shareholder may have very outdated financial information on his hands. Even if he's got the latest annual report, the day it comes out, it might be 4 months old. Halfway through the year, it's 10 months old. It's important that we move ahead with these things and bring our reporting deadlines up to scratch and bring our reporting frequency up to scratch and not get left behind. I don't buy this argument that we have to wait 2 years just because we had a few reforms.
My feeling is some of my clients, they start to realize that it's expensive, and you have to incur a lot of professional costs to keep yourself as a listed company. And it's good because some companies, maybe they're doing very well themselves financially. So it's up to you. It's no need for them to go listed. It's really sometimes maybe from my personal experience, I noticed that back about 8-10 years ago, there's a trend that maybe a lot of the sponsors or merchant bankers or some professionals maybe because the IPO market is very heated. So a lot of SME or the uprising small, those who are successful, then they are being prompted or they are being encouraged to go listing. And gradually, after some time, as a chairman of the listed company, they see some pressure sometimes because you are doing good this year, you must do better next year. You have to think some long-term strategies for your group and to grow. Seems they are not like in the past. You are just enhancing the value for your family. You are responsible to a lot of people.
So, what does the future hold? Prediction is, of course, a notoriously difficult art. But we ask our guests to forecast what are the major corporate governance issues on the horizon for Hong Kong.
People ask me what's going to be the big trend in Hong Kong. And I know there's going to be many trends. There's clearly going to be many of the big family firms that flourished in the 1960s, 70s, the development of, in terms of the manufacturing industry's got really big, and then the property development kicked through. There's obviously going to be a generational transfer of control of these firms happening over the next 10, 15 years. And with that, we're going to see a fragmentation of ownership. We're going to see, in some cases, family feuds as siblings squabble over firms, and we're going to see control break up. And so we're going to see that very unitary, tight control of the corporate sector potentially break down. Some second generation, third generation companies are going to screw it up. They're going to have a greater requirement for capital. We're going to see more mergers and acquisitions. So we're going to have a change in the sort of the corporate ownership of the biggest companies, I think, I would have thought, or at least more dispersed ownership. If you actually look back over the last 10 years in Hong Kong, since I've arrived, there's been very little changes within the domestic economy in terms of core ownership. And I think that will have quite important implications in terms of the way governance kind of works.
What are the outstanding problems? I would say one is the regulatory structure. The fact that we have this conflict between the SFC and the Hong Kong Stock Exchange in terms of the enforcement of the listing rules. That's being addressed to some extent through the amendments to the Securities and Futures Ordinance, but even after statutory backing is given to some listing rules, you'll still have the exchange enforcing other aspects of the listing rules. And I don't believe it's good practice in terms of regulation to have a listed company enforcing rules against its clients, in a sense. So I'd say that's one general area. Another is this discussion about making the SFC chairman non-executive. I think that will weaken the SFC, and I think that is the wrong direction for Hong Kong to be moving in. Another general area is the legal system. I do think we need to find ways to make it more accessible to minority investors, so that if they do have a legitimate claim against a company, they can go to court, and without spending an absolute fortune, be able to launch a court case. So I do think we need to discuss issues such as class action and how you can structure legal fees so that you don't create the ambulance chasing that you have in the US. You don't have to have contingency fees. I mean, there are other systems around the world, such as they have in Australia, where you have class action without the US-style contingency fees. So we can be creative and find ways to create a better legal system without without necessarily all the downsides you have elsewhere. And then again, coming back to the issue of corporate mindset, I would really encourage companies to see governance as something that really strengthens their operations and their management, not something that's just a compliance issue that they need to follow because the government tells them to. But I think what's perhaps more interesting is the behaviour of shareholders and large investors and pension funds. As more money goes into investment funds, as more money goes into pension funds, the pressure on these funds to be cognizant of the interests of their clients and to play a fiduciary role in management of these assets is growing stronger. So you're starting to see much more involvement of pension funds, insurance companies, asset managers in corporate governance issues, whether it's discussions with management, whether it's trying to persuade management to take a certain policy, whether it's voting shares, attending annual general meetings. You're starting to see, I think, much more active involvement by investors. And it's not always shareholder activism in the public sense. A lot of it is just engagement, direct, one-on-one discussions, or a more active exercise of their rights by investors. So I think you'll start seeing much more of that in Hong Kong in the coming years. And one other thing I think is the use of technology. I think you will see, you're seeing elsewhere in the world companies using technology, for example, to webcast their annual meetings, their analyst presentations, and so on. I think you'll start seeing some of that in Hong Kong.
I mean, certainly people have talked to me about what do I see as the longer term developments in corporate governance. And I'd say even with the changes that we've made over the last couple of years, we're very much in phase one of looking at corporate governance, getting the basics right. In other jurisdictions, the debate has moved on from the basics, which are generally well grounded, into areas such as corporate social reporting, dealing with the environment, dealing with ethical issues. And I expect that we'll see greater pressure from institutions that are becoming more attuned to these issues in their investment decisions, greater pressure from those institutions to see some sort of change in Hong Kong. And it'll be interesting to see whether that change happens naturally with companies that want to obtain the support and investment from those companies, or whether, again, it is seen as a competitive issue for the Hong Kong market, that we as regulators address that issue.
Well, the corporate social responsibility, I think for me, it's just another level of sophistication of the way you run your business. And the bigger you get as a company, the more you feel that not only is it a sort of a good thing to do, but it's a socially responsible thing to do, but it's also a commercially responsible thing to do.